snow swallowed the earth like a grave. The wind howled over the high prairie, bitter and merciless, pulling at the edges of a faded wool shawl wrapped tight around Clara Whitlock's shivering frame. Blood crusted at her temple, dark and frozen, blending with the frost that rimmed her lashes. Her fingers, red and raw, barely moved as she clawed through the snowdrift, dragging her broken body forward an inch at a time. The wagon train was long gone. Just tracks now, already filling with snow. Gone, like her husband. Gone, like every promise made to her. They said they'd come back for her. Liars. She collapsed onto her side, coughing, the air burning her throat like pine smoke. She blinked at the dull gray sky and whispered something, maybe a prayer, maybe a curse. Clara had never been the kind of woman folks admired. Her hair was too dark, her voice too sharp, and after Samuel died, her belly too empty. In the town of Fair Hollow, that made her a burden. A widow with no dowry, no land, and no child. Just a heavy heart and callous hands. When Samuel took sick halfway through their journey west, the preacher promised to see her through to spring. He gave her a tired smile and patted her hand like she was a child. But the moment her husband's shallow grave was covered, the tone changed. The men started whispering. The women avoided her. Her food rations mysteriously shrank. And then one morning, she woke to the cold and nothing else. No fire, no wagon, no footsteps. Just a note, fluttering on a branch. God be with you. We cannot. That was 3 days ago. Her lips cracked as she let out a bitter laugh. God be with me, huh? She pressed her face into the snow, the cold kissing her cheek like a lover. Maybe this was how it ended. No drama, no vengeance, just fading into white. But the body was a stubborn thing. A whisper in her blood still throbbed. Crawl. Her husband's voice echoed, faint but firm, as if from 1,000 miles away. Get up, Clara. You're tougher than they know. She hissed and turned onto her stomach. Her limbs shook, muscles screaming, but she pulled herself forward again. A rabbit track crossed her path. She stared at it. The snow was too fresh. It had passed only moments ago. Her stomach ached at the thought of meat, but she had no rifle, no strength. Her strength was memories now, the warmth of Samuel's hand in hers, the way he'd hum when he carved spoons by firelight, how he always said she reminded him of wildfire, unpredictable and fierce. She clung to those memories like kindling in a storm, each one another inch forward. The sky began to darken, that quick, brutal winter dusk that fell like a curtain. She knew what came next. Night, and with it, death. Clara tried to rise to her knees, her legs folded like paper. She coughed again, this time, pink froth on her lips. She looked up. Snowflakes fluttered downward, soft as ash. Then something moved, a shadow among the trees. Tall, silent. Clara's breath caught. Her eyes stung. Another hallucination? No, hooves. She could hear them now. Not the iron clop of settler horses, but the softer, rhythmic beat of something more deliberate. The figure stepped into the clearing. A horse, dark, strong, and riding it, wrapped in fur and leather, face half-shadowed beneath the hood, was a man. He dismounted with a single motion, quiet as snowfall. Clara tried to scream. It came out a croak. The man approached, kneeling beside her. His eyes would color the storm, deep, unreadable. He studied her face. Clara tried to speak. Please. He didn't answer, didn't smile. But he reached forward, gently lifting her as if she weighed nothing. His touch was warm, steady. Her body screamed in pain, but her mind whispered something else. Not a settler. Then darkness. She drifted between worlds, half in memory, half in fire. The sensation of movement, fur against her cheek, the scent of sage and wood smoke. She thought of her mother, long buried back east, of hot bread and hymns sung in churches now gone. At some point, her eyes opened again. Firelight danced across a low ceiling made of curved wooden beams and hides, a structure she didn't recognize. Her body lay atop soft furs. Her coat was gone, her wounds wrapped. Across the room, the man sat sharpening a knife by the fire. He moved slow, deliberate, His hair, long and black, was tied back. He wore no weapons now, only beaded jewelry at his throat and a feather behind his ear. She tried to speak. Her throat burned. He looked up. "You saved me?" She rasped. A pause, then a nod. "Why?" He didn't answer. Silence stretched between them like rope. "I don't have anything," she whispered. "No land. No money. My people left me." Still, no answer. But his eyes didn't leave hers. She licked her lips. "What's your name?" He hesitated. "Taji." Her tongue stumbled over it. "Tazi?" He didn't laugh. But something softened at the edges of his mouth. Not quite a smile, but close. Clara looked away, embarrassed. Her hands clenched the fur beneath her. "They said I'd never make it without a man." Taji set the knife down. "They were right," she added, voice cracking, "but not in the way they meant." He stood and approached. Clara tensed, her breath hitching, but all he did was kneel and pour water into a wooden bowl. He dipped the cloth and handed it to her. She took it with trembling hands. Their fingers touched. He pulled back. "Thank you," she said, voice barely audible. Taji said nothing, only returned to his seat by the fire. Outside, the wind howled again, but inside the little hut, it was quiet, warm. Safe. For now. And for the first time since Samuel died, Clara didn't feel entirely alone. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or if she'd even live long enough to see it. But there was a fire here. Not just the one burning logs and warming the air. Something else. Something older. Stronger. She closed her eyes, holding it close. Outside, somewhere deep in the trees, a wolf howled. She didn't shiver. Not this time. Not anymore. Clara awoke to the crackle of fire and the slow, rhythmic breath of wind pushing against the thick hide walls. Warmth pulsed beneath her, a tangle of fur pelts, soft and dry. Her body ached like it had been rolled down a mountain, but the piercing cold was gone. She blinked. Her head throbbed. The man was there again. Tazi. He sat cross-legged by the fire, carving something from a length of pale wood. The knife in his hand moved smoothly, silently. Shavings curled away and dropped into the dirt beside him. He didn't look up, but she could feel the weight of his attention, like a mountain watching from a distance. Clara shifted and winced. Her ribs stabbed like broken glass. The motion caught his eye. He set the carving aside and reached for something near the flames. A small bowl, steam curling from the surface. He crossed the space between them and crouched at her side, offering it with both hands. Inside, the liquid was murky but fragrant, herbs, root vegetables, and meat. Her stomach turned with hunger. She hesitated. "What is it?" He answered with a single word she didn't know, then gestured again. His eyes held no impatience. Her fingers brushed the bowl as she took it. Heat spread through her palms like sunlight. She brought it to her lips and sipped. Savory. Earthy. The kind of flavor that clung to your bones. She closed her eyes. "Thank you." He nodded once and returned to the fire. Silence stretched again, but this time it wasn't empty. It filled the space like music played too softly to hear the notes. She watched him. His hands were rough but deliberate, each movement purposeful. There was no nervousness, no excess, only calm. "You live here alone?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. After a moment, he tapped his chest. Taji, then held up 2 fingers. "Brothers. Gone." Clara understood. "Sorry," she murmured. He shrugged. "Snow took them. Long ago." They shared that in common, then snow and what it stole. She finished the stew slowly, careful not to spill. Her limbs trembled less than the day before. She looked down and noticed her hands had been wrapped with fresh cloth. The bruises on her wrists had faded from deep purple to sickly yellow. "You did this?" Tazi didn't respond. He just returned to the carving, now shaping a bird's wing from a wood. Clara swallowed. "Why?" That made him glance at her. He didn't speak, only raised his eyebrows slightly, as though the question didn't make sense. "I mean, why save me? I was nearly dead." Tazi's jaw tightened slightly. He pointed to the fire, then to her. Cold kills, he said simply. I warm. It sounded so matter-of-fact. No heroism, no debt, just a decision. Like lighting a lantern. Outside, the wind changed pitch and a distant branch cracked. Clara flinched. The memory of the last few nights curled through her mind like smoke. She leaned back, exhaling. I don't know how to repay you. Taji raised his head. Live. She blinked. That is enough, he added, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Clara stared into the fire. Flames danced on the surface of her bowl, casting shadows across her fingers. Her heart felt strange, full and hollow all at once. She was still grieving, still angry, still alone, but also not. Later that afternoon, she tried to stand. Her legs wobbled beneath her, and she nearly fell against the wall. Taji was there before she could blink, steadying her with a hand beneath her elbow. He didn't speak, didn't mock, just helped her back down and brought her a fur-lined cane carved with symbols she couldn't read. Outside the hut, the snow glittered under sun. Clara stared at it through a narrow flap in the wall. Her breath fogged the air. She could see animal tracks crisscrossing the ridge. Something had come close in the night. Taji, she said carefully, out there, do you hunt? He followed her gaze, then nodded. Rabbit, deer, sometimes bear. She shivered at that. You must think I'm weak. He frowned. Not weak. Sick. Cold. Clara gave a soft, dry laugh. That's a kind way to say helpless. His brow furrowed, confused. She waved a hand. Never mind. There was a pause. Then he knelt beside her and pulled something from his satchel. A small bundle wrapped in leather. He opened it slowly to reveal a length of sinew and feathers. Primitive but elegant. A bowstring. Next to it, a short wooden shaft, unfinished. You learn, he said. What? Arrow, he pointed to it. You make? She stared at him, surprised. You want me to help? He nodded. You stay. You work. You live. A lump rose in her throat. It had been weeks, months, maybe, since anyone had asked anything of her that didn't involve silence or disappearing. She took the arrow from his hand. It was rough, still unshaped. A little like her. The next few days passed like a slow thaw. Taji didn't crowd her. He showed her how to bind the shaft, how to cut fletching. He taught her words in his language, simple ones, things like fire, food, and friend. She stumbled over them, but he didn't laugh, only nodded, correcting her gently. At night, they shared the fire in quiet companionship. Once, she caught him humming a tune under his breath, a low, rhythmic chant that rose and fell like wind on a canyon wall. Your people, do they live nearby? She asked one evening. He shook his head. Far. Mountains. Do they know you're here? Another shake. Then, I choose quiet. She understood that too well. Clara hadn't realized how deeply the silence of the world had sunk into her bones. Now it was being unraveled, slowly, carefully, by kindness wrapped in fur and fire. But safety is never permanent. On the fifth night, she woke to a strange tension in the air. The fire had burned low. Taji stood by the doorway, motionless. His hand hovered near the bough resting beside the frame. Clara sat up. What is it? He didn't turn, just said, riders. Her blood turned to ice. Settlers. Taji didn't answer, but the look on his face said everything. He stepped outside, blending into the darkness like he was made of it. She watched him go, heart pounding against her ribs like a war drum. Outside, the crunch of hooves, distant voices, laughter, English. She crawled to the flap and peered out. Down the hill, torchlight flickered. 3 men, their coats familiar, fringe and buckles. One of them had a rifle slung over his shoulder. The settlers. Her mouth went dry. Taji knelt beside a tree, unmoving, barely a shadow in the brush, watching, calculating. The men passed through, not yet aware of the hut. But Clara knew that would change. Tracks in the snow, smoke from the fire. They'd come up here. And if they found her, alive, warm, protected by a savage, they'd do what men like them did best. She pressed her back to the wall and whispered into the darkness, voice trembling. They'll kill him, just for helping me. Outside, a bird took flight. Taji hadn't moved, but something inside Clara did. The fear was still there, but beside it now lived something new. A spark. She watched the flame dance again in the fire pit. No, not a flame. A promise. And tomorrow she would not be helpless. The next morning arrived bitter and white. A silence laid heavy on the land, broken only by the crunch of snow beneath Clara's boots as she stepped outside the hut for the first time. The cold bit less than before. Or maybe she felt it less now that her skin remembered fire and warmth, now that her body had been taught again what it meant to survive. She held the small bough Taji had given her grip unsteady but improving. He stood a few feet away, his breath rising in ghostly clouds as he inspected a set of tracks near the tree line. His movements were quiet, precise, like a man who never wasted a single step. "Deer?" she asked, voice low. Taji turned his head slightly. No. That one word cracked the air like a twig snapping. Clara stepped closer. He motioned to the ground. A boot print, heavy, deliberate. "Settlers," she whispered. His silence was confirmation. Clara's throat tightened. Her mind pulled her backward, to the moment she'd woken alone in the snow, to the echo of their laughter as they rode away without her, that cruel scribbled note nailed to a tree. "God be with you. We cannot." "Did they see the hut?" she asked. "Not yet," Taji said, finally. She stared down at the print. "They came back." Taji stood slowly. "They always come back." He led her inside. The fire had been banked low to avoid smoke. He motioned for her to sit and went to gather his weapons, bow, a set of arrows, and a small hatchet with a worn, carved handle. Each was checked and laid out with care. Clara didn't sit. She stared at the fire, then down at her hands. They didn't shake anymore. "What will you do?" she asked. "If they come close," I warned. "If they threaten..." His meaning needed no elaboration. "You'll kill them." He looked at her, not with shame, not with pride, just clarity. "I protect my home." Clara's fingers curled into fists. She nodded. "Then I'll help." He paused. "No." Her voice rose, tight and fierce. "You pulled me from death, fed me, healed me. You gave me a place to live when my own people left me to rot in the snow. If they come for you, they come for me." A long silence passed. Then he nodded once. Not permission, acknowledgement. They waited. The day crawled forward, slow and deliberate. Outside, the trees whispered and the wind carried voices. Laughter, male, confident. Then came the sound of a rifle chambering around. Clara's stomach knotted. She crouched beside the hut's entrance, holding the bow, an arrow notched but trembling. She wasn't a fighter. Not yet, but she would not be helpless again. Taji vanished into forest like smoke. 3 settlers emerged from the trees minutes later. One tall and bearded, a leather duster flapping behind him. One younger, round-faced and carrying a rifle too big for his shoulders. The third, broad-chested and grim-faced, walked in front, scanning the area like a predator. Clara recognized him. Eli Jackson, the same man who once offered her a place at his fire after Samuel died, if she didn't mind sharing his blanket. He saw the hut and grinned. Well, he drawled. "Looks like the squaws gotten themselves some fancy lodging." The youngest pointed at the roof. "There's smoke. Someone's home." "I'll be damned," Eli said. Maybe the ghost widow made herself a pet savage. Clara's arrow shook in her grip. Her blood roared in her ears. Eli approached the entrance. Taji struck. It happened so fast. Clara barely saw the blur of motion. A silent shadow lunging from the brush, knocking the younger man flat with a blow from the butt of his bow. The rifle flew from the boy's hands and landed in the snow. The broad-shouldered man spun, yelling. Taji ducked the swinging knife and drove his hatchet into the man's thigh. He screamed, falling to one knee. Eli raised the pistol. Clara loosed the arrow. It missed, but it startled him enough for Taji to pivot, knock the weapon aside, and land a brutal punch across his jaw. Eli fell hard, blood at his lip, gun lost in the snow. The forest echoed with sudden, awful silence. The young one groaned. The other writhed and cursed, gripping his leg. Taji stood over them all, breathing hard but not winded, a warrior born of earth and snow. Eli spat blood. You siding with her now? With one of them. Clara stepped from the hut, bow in hand. Her voice didn't tremble. He saved me. You should have died, Eli hissed. Would have been cleaner. That's what we said. Samuel would have understood. Samuel's dead, she cut in. Eli smirked. Yeah, we buried him. You remember how you begged us? How you cried. That was pitiful. She stepped closer, hands tight at her sides. And you left me there, in a storm, like trash. We left you a note, he sneered. You think he's going to protect you forever? He ain't your kind. He's not your people. No, Clara said softly, but he's more human than you. She picked up the rifle. The young one whimpered. Please, miss. Clara stared down the barrel, heart thundering. Her hands didn't shake. Taji stepped beside her. He didn't touch her, just stood there, silent, waiting. Eli saw the look in her eyes and paled. You gonna shoot me? No, she said, and fired into the snow beside his head. He flinched, hard. You gonna get up? She said. Take your friends and leave. If I see you again, I won't miss. Eli stumbled to his feet, glaring at her. You think you're some kind of warrior now? No, Clara said, lowering the rifle. But I'm not prey anymore. The men limped off, dragging their wounded. No parting words. No threats. Just a shame of cowards retreating from a fight they expected to win. When they were gone, the forest sighed. Clara dropped the rifle and sat in the snow. Her hands tingled. Her breath came in gulps. But there was no fear anymore, just a strange, steady aftertaste of standing tall. Taji crouched beside her. His hand brushed hers. You did not need to shoot, he said gently. She smiled. I did. For me. The wind shifted. Crows circled above. But the trees stood tall and the snow, disturbed, would settle again. I won't ever go back to them, Clara said, staring at the tracks left behind. Even if they beg me. You are not theirs, Taji replied. Not anymore. She turned to look at him. For the first time, she noticed a small scar along his cheekbone. Old, faded, but real. A sign he'd bled before. Fought before. Am I yours? She asked, not out of desperation, but curiosity. Taji met her eyes. You are yours. And that was the first time in her life she understood what that meant. The sun dipped low behind the ridgeline, shadows stretching long across the forest floor. A new silence fell, not the fearful hush of waiting, but the peaceful kind that follows after storms. Inside, the fire still burned, and tomorrow they would build again, together. The frost hadn't left the valley, but it no longer crept into Clara's bones. The cold was still bitter, still biting, but now she understood it. Now she breathed with it. She walked the edge of the tree-line, her cloak stitched from hides and her boots wrapped in fur and sinew. A bough rested across her back, not as a decoration but as a tool. In her hands, a bundle of kindling, freshly gathered, dry and perfect for starting the morning fire. The old Clara might have wept from exhaustion by now. The new one only looked up at the sky and judged the angle of the sun. Winter still reigned, but not for long. The rivers had started to whisper again beneath their frozen skins. Birds called out in the thinning wind. Life stirred. So did Clara. Inside the hut, Taji tended a stew pot hanging low over fire. The smell of rabbit and wild herbs filled the space, curling like incense around their modest home. He glanced at her as she entered, nodded once, and returned to his task. She knelt beside him and added the kindling to the fire's edge, feeding the flame like it was something sacred. Maybe it was. Fire had saved her. No, he had. But fire had kept a promise. You smell like pine, Taji murmured. Clara smirked. Better than blood and ash. His eyes crinkled. It wasn't often he smiled, but when he did, it settled deep, like sunlight through fog. She sat beside him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, you've changed, he said. She considered it. I think I remembered who I was. Before all the grief. Before I was someone's wife, someone's burden. He reached out and ran a hand down her braid. You are not burden. Clara turned her face toward the fire. You never once asked me to become anything else. I only saw the flame inside you, he said simply. She closed her eyes. Everyone else saw smoke. They ate quietly. Afterward, she helped him tend to a wounded hawk he'd rescued from a snare, its wings slowly mending. She stroked its feathers while Taji changed the wrappings, his hands gentle but firm. The hawk didn't struggle anymore. It trusted them now, trusted her. When the chores were done, they walked the ridge. Below them, the wide sweep of snow-blanketed earth shimmered in the afternoon sun. She could see where the deer had passed through, where the wolves trailed behind. A land scarred by survival, but still breathing. Taji took something from his satchel and handed it to her, a thin strand of leather strung with carved beads, each one shaped like a snowflake or bird, polished with care. For you, he said. Clara held it like it was glass. What is it? Marriage necklace. Her breath caught. He didn't press, just stood there, watching the wind move through her hair. He would not demand. He never had. She looked out at the valley again. The wind roared low, like a sleeping animal. You don't ask for anything, she said softly. You give, and you stay, he replied. That is more than many. She turned to face him fully. When I met you, I was dying. I thought it was the end of me. I thought you were a ghost. He chuckled once, low, a loud ghost. She smiled. But you weren't. You were just a man, one who saw me when I couldn't even see myself. She slipped the necklace over her head. It rested against her chest, warm from her hands. I am yours, she said. No, he said gently. You are ours. Together. They stood like that for a while, two shapes against the white, neither alone anymore. The return of spring promised new dangers. They both knew that. The settlers hadn't forgotten her. Word spread in small communities faster than fire through dry grass. A woman left for dead, now shacked up a Navajo warrior? That was the kind of story men made ugly. And that day did come. Near dusk, as they gathered firewood near the creek, a gunshot split the quiet. Clara dropped instinctively, heart hammering. Taji spun, arrow drawn, eyes scanning the ridgeline. Voices, 3, maybe 4, closing in. Clara's blood turned to ice. A figure stepped from the trees. Eli Jackson. His coat was torn, his lips scarred from their last encounter, and his eyes burned with something darker than cruelty. Didn't think we were done, did you, Clara? He called. She stood slowly, bow in hand. I told you not to come back. You're right, he said. You did, but I ain't here to talk. Behind him, 2 more men emerged, one older, the other younger than Clara, both carrying rifles. Taji's arrow never wavered. Eli grinned. Lower that bow, savage, or she dies first. You should run, Clara called, voice sharp, because I will shoot this time. Eli sneered. You think that red necklace makes you one of them? You think you belong out here? I know I do, she said, because I survived something you never could. He raised his rifle. Taji loosed his arrow. It struck Eli's shoulder, spinning him sideways with a cry of rage. Gunfire exploded. Clara dropped, rolled behind a tree, and fired. Her arrow hit the younger man's leg. He screamed and went down. Taji moved like wind, silent, lethal. He struck the last man before he could reload, knocking the weapon from his grip and driving a fist into his gut. Eli tried to flee, stumbling into the snow, but Clara was already behind him. Stop, she shouted. He froze, clutching his bleeding shoulder. You left me to die, she said, stepping closer. You laughed while you did it. He wheezed. You think you're better now? You think living in a hut with that savage makes you strong? She lowered the bow. No, she said. I know it does. He lunged for her. She stepped aside and slammed the butt of her bow across the side of his head. He crumpled, unconscious. The forest returned to stillness. Taji stood at the edge of the trees, breathing hard, watching her. Clara exhaled slowly. She walked to him and reached for his hand. He took it without a word. The men would live. She and Taji would bind their wounds, leave them under the same sun that warmed the rest of the world. But they would never return, because Clara Whitlock was no longer a cast-off settler's wife. She was something reborn. That night, she sat beside the fire, necklace against her chest, Taji beside her. Outside, the snow still fell in flakes, soft and slow, the kind that blanket the land in silence. But inside the hut, laughter sparked like kindling. She watched the hawk stretch its healing wing. Soon it would fly, and so would they. Maybe not far, maybe never from this valley, but they would rise, together. And if the world came again, cold and cruel, it would find the wife of winter waiting, strong, unyielding, and no longer alone. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Somewhere out there, someone still trapped in the snow needs to know they can still survive.